Today on Uncommon Sense, Albert and I will dive into the upcoming Lent campaign, Mercy Triumphs, as we share some of the quotes that we are most looking forward to meditating on this year. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton. I'm Grettelyn Darkey, and I'm joined here with my wonderful co-host, Albert. How are you, Albert?
I'm great. It's about to start Lent, and trying to think about it from a positive standpoint. Lent is not something to sort of dread and fear, but rather something that we sort of embrace and that takes us to the great celebration waiting us on the other side.
Beautiful. Yes. Yeah. I remember as a kid, I was always kind of like, Lent.
Yeah.
But now I look forward to it because I'm like, oh, great. I get to work on myself. The stuff that I can't manage to do the rest of the year, we're going to do it for these 40 days. So
spiritual growth, right?
Yeah. It's become this marathon in my head. But anyway, we would like to share with you today, if you've experienced with us before, our Lent campaign or our Advent campaign, that's just you sign up and we send you every single day during Advent and Lent and through the Christmas/Easter season as well. Beautiful reflections and quotes from G.K. Chesterton to help you through Lent, to help you make your way in a very spiritual, Chestertonian way. And if you would like to sign up for that, we have the link in the description, but you can go to chesterton.org/Lent. That's Lent. And you can put your email in and sign right up and receive these wonderful reflections in your inbox every single day. So today, just to whet your appetite a little, Albert and I are going to share some of our favorites that are coming up this Lent. Albert, you want to start and share your favorite quote from this campaign?
Sure. And just so everyone knows, this theme for our Lenten campaign follows the spiritual and the corporal works of mercy. So every reflection, every quote from Chesterton follows one of those works. And for my first one that I chose actually comes a little bit later down into like the third week of Lent, regarding where we are told to counsel the doubtful. And the quote is, "But what we suffer from today is humility in the wrong place. Modesty has moved from the organ of ambition. Modesty has settled upon the organ of conviction where it was never meant to be. A man was meant to be doubtful about himself, but undoubting about the truth. This has been exactly reversed. Nowadays, the part of a man that a man does assert is exactly the part he ought not to assert, himself. The part he doubts is exactly the part he ought not to doubt, the divine reason." And this is a quote from Orthodoxy, that great book that seems to keep coming up with Chesterton from every angle. Mm-hmm. But again, and we do this so much with Chesterton, I feel like this is where we're at. And, Chesterton saw it, and this is where we're at today. And Lent would be a great time to stop doubting divine reason, to stop doubting the Almighty, because I got to say, it seems like we continue to see where people are just not interested in a God-influenced explanation or a God-influenced reasoning or really anything that is supposedly from God. It's like, well, no. I've got it. I'm the truth. I am not to be doubted. But that God thing, I think I'm not so sure about it. So that quote just really jumped out to me.
Beautiful. And I love the way he says that modesty has moved away from ambition. That's so true. It's this where you're supposed to be, where modesty is a virtue, right? Is where you kind of damp down your willingness to sort of just dominate other people. But he says that's sort of not a thing anymore, and asserting yourself and being yourself and you're the center of the universe has sort of become the mantra for everybody. Whereas it's considered modest to be like, well, I don't know about these truths. They don't really exist. That's not modesty at all. That's just doubt of the truth. It's a great quote.
Yeah, no, and we include in the reflections what we should pray upon, what to think about, and also a suggestion for something that you could do, right? And we call it the act on it part. That's the suggestion for something you can do. And for this particular one, the act on it says, is there anyone you know who could benefit from your mentorship? Reach out to them. And I want to believe that there are people in our lives that we know, that we maybe don't know yet, but that could use a little bit of reassurance in divine reason and a little less assurance in themselves. And, sort of really, even if it just comes down to a simple matter of faith, it's like, hey, you've got to trust in what God's doing. You've got to trust in God's plan, that he's got it figured out and that God is going to take care of things ultimately. So I really appreciate that, suggestion. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're out there and you're listening, if there's someone who you think could use a little bit of mentorship and coming to not doubt divine reason, well, just like the suggestion says, please, reach out to them.
Beautiful. And there will be more and more suggestions as you sign up and get these in your inbox every day.
So what do you got, Grettelyn?
Well, I'm glad you picked some from later in Lent, because mine jumped out at me. I started reading and I was like, oh, this one and this one and this one. So mine are pretty early. But the first one I have is rather, it's a little bit long, but it's just the second day of Lent, Thursday after Ash Wednesday. And the work of mercy for this one is feed the hungry. Chesterton says, "Why should I worry because I do not know whether I am doing good or harm when I give a meal to a beggar? I do not know whether I am doing good or harm when I give a meal to myself. For such as we eat in civilized times and with civilized digestion, food, in this sense, contains the seeds of death almost as much as the seeds of life. Do not tell me that I do not know what happens to the half-crown that I give to that recognized tramp, Weary Willie. I do not know what happens to the ham sandwich that I gave to that hungry outcast, G.K. Chesterton. I do not want to know. I know that in one sense we are all pouring gifts into a bottomless universe, a universe that uses the gifts in its own way and in a complexity beyond our control or even our imagination." So that's a really, I think, a really good one. I feel like every time I see people asking for money on the side of the road, I have this doubt. Oh, is this real? Are they just playing me? What's going on here? And Chesterton just so beautifully points out that it just doesn't matter. It's a lot more about what the good that you're doing for your own soul, even by your generosity. And if someone's taking advantage of you, that's not your fault. That has nothing to do with you. But probably most of the time you're helping somebody anyway. So, just a really beautiful, really beautiful reflection on what it means to feed the hungry without really counting the cost. Just purely giving of yourself.
I think that we forget sometimes that the Lord is looking at our heart and our intentions in those moments. And we want to help in a situation. We want to help with a homeless person. We want to help with someone who's begging, on the side of the road. But we question. It's like, oh, I want to help them and I want to do something good for them, but I don't know what they'll do. But I'm going to trust that, they're going to do something good with the money. They're going to get something to eat, something to drink. And the Lord recognizes our intention. The Lord is not blind to what our hearts are trying to do. The Lord doesn't look at us and say, how could you give them money? they're just going to go and drink that money away. What the Lord sees is that we tried to help one of, his children. And that should help to encourage us a little bit more. I don't think it's going to make us suddenly be going out and finding every homeless person, give them all something to eat, give them all money. But in those moments when we feel convicted, we should know that the Lord recognizes our hearts, the Lord recognizes our intentions, that the Lord knows that we are trying to do something good. And if we trust, hopefully maybe God can find some way to work through that. And maybe God can reach out to them. Maybe they needed one moment, they needed one person, to help them get a little bit further. And we don't know those things. We just hope and pray that all things are well. But we should be assured of God understanding that we are trying to do something good.
Yes, that's beautiful. And I love how, it's a long quote, but I love how Chesterton sort of smacks on the head the idea that we would know better. Like, I don't even know what happens to the ham sandwich I just ate. Was it good for me? Was it not? I don't know. And, living in industrial England, it's possible it wasn't very good for him. But it's just a beautiful sort of reflection that because I think there's sort of an I know better mentality when you decide not to give someone in need something because you feel that they might use it improperly, particularly the homeless. I think it's because you know nothing about this person, right? You have no way of tracking what they're going to do with this gift. But there's sort of this idea that it's not on you to make that call. It's up to you to be generous or not. That's your only role in this situation. So so very beautiful. And so, of course, humorously and well said.
Yeah, and I think the last point is also we don't want to necessarily do this for selfish reasons so that we can stand up and say, look what I did. But truth is that a lot of times you feel good when you do something to help someone else. So if for no other reason, really like, hey, it gives you a little boost. Say, you know what? I helped someone today. I don't know what happened, but I helped someone. And that's a good thing. I was a Boy Scout growing up, and that whole thing about do a good turn daily. It really is. It's legitimate. When you find a way to do something every day, something small, something big for someone, and it has an impact not just on the person you've helped, but also on yourself. So there's a lot of good that comes from helping people, and I think that. If we just don't look too far into it, kind of like Chesterton saying like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but at least I know, we're trying to do something good.
Right. Yeah. And it has helped your soul. You can be assured of that. So great.
All right, I'll go. We're going to also continue to move further down the line. And this one comes from the 4th week of Lent. And surrounds the theme "Give drink to the thirsty." And this one's kind of fun. Speaking as a Catholic, I am. Sorry, this is Chesterton speaking. This is not me speaking. Quote Chesterton: "Speaking as a Catholic, I am very proud and happy to say that I know of no reason in heaven or earth why a barmaid should not sometime or other be canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church. It is simply a question of in what way, with what motives, and in what spirit she minded the bar." And they're using the quote to help with the theme of give drink to the thirsty, but I want to pull the quote out of that context for just a little bit, because I think that we can look at someone who works at a bar and say, oh, what are they doing working at a bar? Don't they know what happens at a bar? Or someone who works in any other profession that maybe seems questionable. Why are they doing that? What are they doing? If the profession itself is not immoral, like there's nothing that says that working as a bartender is immoral. Now, a lot of things can obviously happen from being at a bar, but the bar itself is not necessarily immoral. Working as a bartender is not immoral. There's a lot of professions like that where people want to be like, I can't believe that you do that as a career. Hey, you know what? We still have tax collectors. We have people work for the IRS, and that was huge back in, Bible days. Like, oh, tax collectors. they're doing their job, you know. And as long as their intentions, or as Chesterton says, what motives? If their motives aren't ill-intentioned, then they're fine. They're okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You just may object to it personally. Well, that's your choice, but
Right.
it's okay. So this example, the barmaid was giving people drink, and drink's not a bad thing. She was feeding the thirsty.
Right. And in many ways, a good bartender, it sort of has a high responsibility because it's their job to cut you off. So there's this sort of judgment. There's a need to know people, to really kind of get to know people in a certain way. You don't have to be everybody's buddy when you're the bartender, but it's a very interesting profession, I think, in order to just be able to be able to make that call while still trying to serve people. And again, it's a service profession too. And I think there's a tendency to look down on service professions, but they are opportunities for people to do a lot of good. And I read one time that a bartender is a man's hairdresser. He'll tell them anything. But there's this sort of idea that, you might be the only friend that person has for the evening. And drink to the thirsty is not necessarily only, the glass of cold water, but maybe the glass of cold beer as well.
Hey, there's a lot of stories from like years gone by. I mean, like some of the saint stories. It was the cask of wine that didn't go dry. It wasn't the cask of water, it was wine.
Right.
Like that was the primary drink for a lot of people, like not water, because they had access to wine, but not to clean water. So yeah, let's not dump down on an alcoholic beverage just because it's beer. It's like, hey, remember Jesus, water into wine. A lot of people like the fact that Jesus didn't turn water into water. He turned water into wine.
He didn't purify the water.
Right. He didn't run it through a Brita or a Berkey.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would hope from the crowd that listens to us, we won't get too much objection from that one. Great quote, Albert. Well, let's move it along. I'm eager to share some more of mine, if that's okay.
All right, go for it.
Excuse me. So again, I've got an early on one, but this one, the theme, the Lenten work of mercy is admonish the sinner, which I think is, for me, hard because I don't like conflict. But anyway, Chesterton says, but it is obvious anyhow that when we call a man a coward, we are in so doing asking him how he can be a coward when he could be a hero. When we rebuke a man for being a sinner, we imply that he has the powers of a saint. I really like that one. Because I don't know, I'm the sort of person that likes to help everybody feel good, and I just want to smooth everything over. It's a challenge for me to even discipline my kids when I need to. But this is a reminder to me that there's sort of a duty that we have to hold each other to that high standard. And if you can, in charity, remind someone that when they're sinning, they're doing wrong, what you're actually doing, if you're doing it properly, is calling someone to be a saint. And if you look at any of the Gospels, that's exactly how Christ would admonish people, even the Pharisees, who he always seemed to be getting into it with. It was always in this sense of like, you're a scribe, you're a master of the law, like, do better, guys. And I just think, again, Chesterton wonderfully puts this call that we have, sort of a duty to each other, to call each other to be saints, not to settle for sinning.
And you're right, it is tough. I think a lot of people, they try to avoid conflict. I know I'm not out seeking conflict, but in my heart, right, I know what is right, and to do that right thing for the sake of another, for the sake of something greater, I think it's hard, but it's worth it, right? So when we can approach someone in a situation like this and say, hey, that's a sinful action, or, that's a moral issue here, and there's got to be something different to do, however it is that you can peacefully talk to someone, right? Because obviously you just go up and yell and scream at them, and it doesn't go over so well. I don't think most people respond well to being yelled at. But there's something greater that you do for that person. And again, it's not that we do it for ourselves, but then it's like, hey, I tried to help someone get to heaven, basically. Mm-hmm. That's what you can boil it down to. Like, I don't want to see this person suffer eternally, and if there's a moment where I can help them get a little bit closer to heaven, then I should do that. And Chesterton recognizes the importance of that.
Yeah, and there's sort of this act of discernment where you have to decide, is this person open to this? Are they open to hearing it from me?
Right.
I think there's a lot of truth that I have a hard time hearing from my husband say, even though I know that it's true, that I might hear better from somebody else. But that's my own humility I have to work on. But you kind of have to have this moment of discernment where you say, is this the right moment? Am I the right person? And then, you just kind of rely on the Holy Spirit to answer those questions. Yeah. And hopefully you are. And if you're not, hopefully you did the right thing and it's okay. And yeah, but sometimes you have to take that chance. I think it's easy to sort of live comfortably with people instead of trying to help them be saints and get to heaven.
Right.
All right, what else you got, Albert?
I've got one more. And we're going to move to April for this one. And I can find it in this long list of fantastic meditations. Here we go. Oh, we get into Easter for this one. How appropriate.
Wonderful.
Let's so we come back to counsel the doubtful again. And the quote from Chesterton says, "But when a man is directly asked about his religion, that is, his sense of the supreme truth, he must testify, even if his testimony is entirely unpopular." Mm. And right now, it is not necessarily a popular time to be talking about Jesus. Mm-hmm. But thankfully, thank the Lord, there are people who are not shying away. Mm. And it is not necessarily the popular opinion in some groups, in some areas of society. People do not want to hear about the supreme truth, right? But it's Chesterton. I'll say it again. Chesterton says he must testify, and okay, let's play both sides here. Whatever you believe in, you should be willing to testify to that truth. Mm-hmm. We have our supreme truth that we believe in our hearts is the ultimate truth, that there is no other truth. Other people have a truth that they believe is the truth beyond a doubt. And to a certain extent, you can respect the person for fighting for that truth if they actually do it. Mm-hmm. Now, right or wrong is not the question. The question is, will you testify to the supreme truth that you believe in?
I think that's why Chesterton respected so many of his opponents, because they would fight for what they believed in.
Most definitely. And that is worthy of respect. Mm-hmm. That is very worthy of respect. To look at the other person and say, you will defend your truth. And that is worthy. Versus someone who's like, oh, this is what I believe in. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to really. Well, I don't want to quarrel about it.
As a former, I haven't done it in a while, but as a former fencer, not someone who builds fences, but someone who fights with swords, you cannot win if you don't get into the fight, right? So if you're just going to stand on the sidelines and shrug your shoulders, no one's going to get anywhere anyway. So there is actually some virtue in a charitable Christian way in sort of jumping in, drawing your sword and getting into it, because otherwise no one's going to move anywhere. You're just all standing on the sidelines. I don't know, sure, whatever. The as Bishop Barron says, the "I'm okay, you're okay" attitude,
Right.
that where nobody's actually okay.
Right. That is not okay.
It's not okay. It's not okay. That's a
And, and to sort of elaborate upon your analogy, that fight comes out in a lot of different ways. Pulling out your sword comes out in many different ways. So, lest someone think that you literally have to go get a sword and a shield and, go out fighting. It's the fight, the defense of your supreme truth can happen in any number of ways. Some very peaceful, some not so peaceful. But you have to find that way that you're called and go out there and do that. And then again, you will be worthy of respect because you found your way to defend that truth that you believe in.
and to defend my fencing analogy, just and to take it a little further, there is a long tradition of sort of respect that goes into fencing. You start and end with a salute. You sort of are looking for openings in a very intellectual way. And there are many behaviors that are frowned upon, such as like screaming at your opponent or throwing your mask on the ground or any. So just not to give you a fencing lesson, but just to show that there are, you still can get into it in a very intense way and keep that sort of respect and keep that, just respect for your opponent foremost in your mind. And I think Chesterton was particularly good at that himself, as we know, with his relationships with Shaw and many of his and Wells and many of his opponents.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I think that's a really great place to wrap this up. I think we've given you a really good taste of what you can enjoy and hopefully will help you prepare for Easter if you go to chesterton.org/Lent and sign up to receive these wonderful quotes and reflections and advice in your inbox every day, starting really soon because Lent is really soon. Anyway, thank you so much, Albert. This has been great fun to unpack this with you.
Oh, it's wonderful. I love unpacking Chesterton, and especially around a really big liturgical season like Lent. It's good to see that Chesterton is a man. He is a man of all seasons. I don't want to steal from St. Thomas More there, but really, Chesterton is a man for all time.
Truly. And it's beautiful in this particular series to really see his spirituality come out so plainly and so practically. It's wonderful. Anyway, again, the link is in the description, but chesterton.org/Lent. You can sign right up. We look forward to walking through Lent with you and journeying toward Easter. I just want to thank everybody for listening with us and joining us on Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to leave us positive reviews and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And again, thank you so much, and we hope that you tune in next time, because remember, Chesterton is always better with friends. Bye-bye.